It is 7:20, so the Prime Minister has vowed to see her Brexit plan through, despite 7 ministers resigning and the calls for a vote of no confidence in her leadership.
More senior resignations could follow today, and Jeremy Corbyn has slammed the Brexit deal a shambolic mess. But what do the public, what do the normal people of the country think of the plan more than 2 years after the referendum? Well, Juliet Dunlop is in Blackpool, where more than 67% of people voted to leave. So, do people there feel this is a good deal?
Well, morning, Kate. Speaking to people here in Blackpool, many feel that they and this part of the country really have been ignored for far too long. Here in Blackpool, the jobless rate is above the national average. Tourism has been in decline for some years, and that partly explains why just so many people voted to leave the EU. But here in Sue's Cafe this morning, we've got 3 customers. You all have slightly different opinions about how things are going. Danny, I know you're a local businessman. You voted to leave the EU.
Yes.
How do you feel things are going at the moment, given the current political turmoil?
It's like you say, it's turmoil, it's a catastrophe. We need a general election, we need somebody that's not a Remainer to direct us, you know, to leave, and that's what we need to do. We need to leave.
Now, that would indicate that you think Theresa May is not the right person for the job. So
not at all.
Who would you like to see take over?
Anybody, doesn't matter. Anybody.
Would they have to be a Brexiteer?
Well, yeah, because that's what we want. We want to leave, don't we? And at the moment, we've got a half-stay, half-go, backroom deals, and we're still going to be connected. We're still going to have the laws run by unelected bureaucrats, and we don't want that. We want to be free. We want to be a sovereign nation again, like we were originally. I've always lived here 40 years, you know, so I've always been. I've not known any different, and we need change. We really do need change.
OK, so Danny wants change. Tim, you are that rare thing in Blackpool, aren't you? You voted to remain, and you feel really quite strongly that you're almost being taken out of the EU against your will. I mean, how worried are you at the minute about the way the negotiations are going about the future?
I'm very worried. We had a referendum where Leave campaigned on false promises and slogans painted on the side of buses that were shown to be untrue. Now we have a plan for Brexit that's kind of hopes and dreams to be further negotiated after we go over the cliff of Brexit.
So very worried about the future. And Paul, again, you differ here, that really you did know what you were voting for, you feel, and a lot of your decision-making to vote Leave, you were saying it was about the NHS. How big a part did that play in why you voted to leave?
Because I've got a sick dad and nothing's been done, no backup or anything like that.
And
Not
you were
at all.
hoping that extra money would come to the NHS?
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's just, it needs a change.
OK. So the view here this morning of 3 customers in Blackpool's all slightly different, but as you can hopefully hear, there is quite a lot of concern just about how this process is going to unfold in the coming days and weeks.
Well, we've only got 133 days, have we? Thank you very much, Juliet. We're joined now by former Shadow Business Secretary Chuka Umunna, former Conservative Party leader Ian Duncan-Smith, and European politics expert Professor Anand Menon. Good morning to all of you. Professor, maybe we can start with you. The deal's right there, 588 pages of it, if not a few more. Is it a good deal? You're a professor of economics, European economics. Is it a good deal?
I mean, it's a very clever compromise. It's a compromise between the red lines that Theresa May laid down and the guidelines the European Union set themselves for the negotiation. I mean, so from a purely sort of academic point of view, if you want, reading that document, you can read it and admire it as an attempt to square a series of very, very different circles. The problem is it's managed to annoy everyone on both sides. So politically, it's not doing very, very well at all. In terms of the sort of imagination of those who managed to draft it, it's a pretty impressive document.
So in a way, if it's a very clever compromise, isn't that what we were looking for? Isn't that what the nation wanted? Or is it actually just bad for everybody?
I think what we're finding is it's very hard to split the difference on Brexit. So you can't say, OK, so this lot want this lot want this, let's find something that's roughly in the middle. All that happens is that everyone's principles are offended then, and I think we saw that in the House of Commons yesterday.
So, Chuka, there you go. The politics professor European Politics Press says, actually, it's an admirable document.
And I think we should listen to experts every now and then.
but interestingly...
Especially when they agree with you.
But interestingly, the tricky thing is that actually it's just upset everybody. And is that what Theresa May did wrong? And actually what she should have done is gone, we're going to go here, and these people are going to be happy with the deal. And actually what she's tried to do is measure the line down the middle and keep everybody happy.
Well, the first thing is, you're talking about a deal. We don't have a deal as promised by the Prime Minister in her Lancaster House speech last year. Last year, she said, by this stage, we would have a fully fleshed out agreement, including our future trading relationship. We're not going to get that. We've got a political declaration of aspiration, but we're not going to get the future trading relationship. And yet, then, we are paying over £40 billion as a divorce bill without a guarantee what the trading arrangements will be in the future.
I mean, obviously the process has been extraordinarily complicated and taken a lot longer. And we do have a 2-year transition period where she's talking about the fact that we can then sort out the trade agreement.
Everyone I speak to who negotiates trade deals is telling me that for us to negotiate the free trade deal she's talking about will take 3 to 4 years. But I have to say, I mean, you would have been talking about it on the show yesterday. These resignations, you know, Dominic Raab, Esther McVeigh, before that, Boris Johnson, David Davis, these were the architects of the chaos and madness that we have seen. And having created this entire mess, for them to just walk off the field and leave other people to clear it up, it's a disgrace. These people are shameless. And in fairness to the Prime Minister, why are they angry with her? They are angry with her because she is trying to square the circle of fantasy that they sold to the British people.
I thought this is a great line in the Mail. It said, she's got clowns to the left of her, jokers to the right, May's stuck in the middle with EU. I mean, that is sort of sums it up, doesn't it? That's what she's got.
I mean, I'm not fond of quoting Little John, but, you know, he's got his point.
New best friend.
It's a strange morning for you, isn't it?
I know.
Listening to experts quoting Little John.
Well, he's not an expert. I wouldn't say he's an expert.
But that's a great point that Chuka makes, isn't it, Ian? That these guys, as Ian pointed out, all these guys that were the architects of this chaos are now sitting on the sidelines watching Theresa May and what's left of her cabinet pick up the pieces.
Yes, I think two things. We just separate out the human bit of it and then what's this trade deal about. So I'm going to park the human bit for a moment because it's their decision. If they don't agree with something, I've always said if you're in Cabinet and you don't think you can collectively sell that policy, you have to go. I resigned 3 years ago.
They negotiated it.
But hang on a second, let's come back to what the deal is now. So the deal here at the moment has some good bits in it, but it has some, I think, rather fatal flaws in it. And it's the question really outstanding is whether those fatal flaws can be dealt with. Chuka's right in one sense that we said that there'd be nothing agreed till everything is agreed, which means there is no element here of future relationship, which has to at least come in some straight nature. So it's not an agreed deal at the moment. And the second element about it, which is quite important, is the backstop, which is really the big problem in the middle of this arrangement. The backstop, which the EU has insisted on because of Ireland and Northern Ireland, has posed real problems for Northern Ireland, in the sense that there could end up being a soft border between Northern Ireland and the UK. And importantly, there's one bit which I raised yesterday, which is, right now, if we think, for example, in that next 2 years of transition, that the EU is not negotiating in good faith, if we're really concerned, what we will have a problem with is we'll never be able to come out of the customs union, which we're locked into as a result of the backstop, because they have a 50% say in whether we leave or we stay.
So
and that's really where the problem arises.
And
so that means we have to try and sort that bit out if we're going to make this agreement.
So you think we should go back and try, because Europe has said they're not going to negotiate anymore.
Wow.
And I think that's the problem, that so you think they might... Because
yeah, no,
I think feel we've got to get
it's not going to get through the House of Commons. I mean, this is an unusual scenario where both me and Ian are saying we wouldn't vote for this agreement.
So but then what happens then? You have to take responsibility. We might end up with a hard Brexit. We might end up with no Brexit at all.
Well, let me just say...
Because we've got to the point, haven't we, where we can debate about what we might have wanted, what would have been good, what maybe should have happened. Okay. But in the end, it's like a divorce. I've been through one of those. You have to accept what you've got is what you've got.
You do. But I think like all these things, the one thing that you know about negotiations in the European Union is that they almost invariably go right to the wire. And I think the reality for the European Union is genuinely, I was with Monsieur Barnier and took a team in to talk to him about open borders about 3 weeks ago. And we sat down, we were 2 hours with each other. I actually got on rather well with him. I thought he was pretty straight with me. And I was interested in, he was very clear to me at the time. He said, we want to treat you as a third country. We want that clarity. And we want to make sure, therefore, that whatever we do around that allows us to get on with that process. Now, I actually think he's right, and I think if he realises and believes that, as Chuka says, we're not going to get this through the Commons, what they don't want is a terrible mess at the end. They do have an interest in seeing this go steadily.
Right. So you think they should go back, say, this is not going to go through the Commons, we've tried it, it's not accepted, you have to do something?
Well, I think there's two bites of the cherry. One is there's the provisional summit on Sunday, the 25th of November, where there's an opportunity to get something more. It is due to come to the Commons around...
That isn't what's at stake at the moment, though. What they think they're doing is going to the 27 countries to just get an agreement. They don't think they're meeting to give more.
But there isn't an agreement until it's finalised at that EU Council. And then it will come back to the Commons. And then, if it doesn't get through the Commons, there is another EU Council in December. But, I mean, I'm not sure how you break the gridlock. And this is one of the reasons I've been advocating us having a people's vote on the deal. Because in the absence of actually getting an agreement in Westminster, in Parliament, I don't see how you resolve it other than the people getting a say on it. And don't forget, 700,000 people marched in London for this. 1 million people signed a petition.
Yeah.
They're saying that we shouldn't be the only ones who have a say on this. They want to say on the
Professor, let's
go
go Professor Anand on this, on two things. You know European Parliament, you know European politics. We heard Angela Merkel saying last night there's not going to be any more negotiations. We've heard it a number of times. They're not going to negotiate. That's how it is. Do you think that they will negotiate some more with us? And also, what's the answer to the backstop? Because it's the backstop that is causing serious issues. Certainly, we see the DUP turning around now and saying that they are not going to support Theresa May. She's got to go, and that's a massive issue.
And the one thing being in the customs union does is solve that problem for the short term.
Well,
the hard point. For the
part.
short term, yeah.
Well, two things. One, about Angela Merkel, well, she would say that, wouldn't she? It's in their interests to say we're not going back to the table because they just want a deal. The thing is, the European Union, it's very, very hard to see them moving on the backstop because they have committed themselves to what the Irish want out of this and have made it very, very clear for several months now that actually the text that we agreed last December is essentially the text that we're going to have to deal with now on the backstop. So there's a degree of inflexibility in the European Union on this. How we deal with the Irish question, I mean, one of the great ironies about this is the one massive concession the European Union made to us was the customs territory, because they thought that would be the thing that allowed the Prime Minister to sell this at home. And, of course, we got back, it went to Parliament, and that was one of the main focuses of the attacks from our own side. Yeah. So I think in Brussels now, they're probably thinking, we cannot figure out what we can give her.
That will help make it work.
I think there's actually... I agree in part with that, but the one point I would say is, having had this meeting with him, I don't think it's quite as rigid as that. I think that, notice there is a piece in this 500-page document that says this is the proposal for the backstop unless, it says, there is another arrangement that can be agreed in that meantime. So they've left the door slightly ajar, that obviously believing there may be a problem. That
so why can't
there is another way?
Why can't we find?
Well, there is another way. I'm not going to go into details about it because I did a protocol for them at their request. But the reality is, I do know and believe that they know that they're expecting, in part, this to come back to them because they don't... You know, they're pushing. This is what they wanted. You're absolutely right. They wanted this in December. But what they do also know is they do desperately want to get an arrangement that's tidy. And so what they're not going to do is shut the door. And Mrs Merkel, of course, would say that. But in reality, the big problem is Mrs Merkel has played little part in this at all.
So do you know what's so interesting about what Ian's saying here is that we've been on this show quite a lot together. And the number of times he's been here saying, oh, these EU bureaucrats, they don't listen, they want to bully us. And here you have Ian admitting he had a very pleasant conversation with Michel Barnier. And do you know why? It's because far from wanting to punish this country, actually, our EU partners see us as partners and friends. They see this as damage limitation.
Because Michael Gove is just emerging for his home. Let's see if he says anything to our reporters there.
Mr Gove, are you going to support the Prime Minister, sir? Just gives an idea that this is only this is only a draft agreement, isn't it? Everyone's resigning over it, but surely, why are there so many resignations at the moment, sir?
You were up for the job of Brexit Secretary. Why did you say no to that, Mr Gove?
Mr Gove, are you off to see the Prime Minister now? Does she still have your full support?
Why did you turn down the job of Brexit Secretary, Mr Gove?
Mr Gove, we've spoken to Labour people this morning. Surely we're heading for a general election with all these resignations.
So a lot of frenzied activity.
I bet he wished his driver had parked a bit closer to the house, actually. That was a long walk of questions. So, of course, everyone's wondering if he is going to resign. What do you think?
Well,
go on, you go.
You know him better than me.
Well, I do, and I know... look, I know Michael very well. I know he is quite a profound thinker about these things, and I think he's genuinely worried. He would have taken that Brexit job if he thought that this was sellable. But, you know, he would have watched the House of Commons yesterday.
But didn't you have
and
a
when
word
you've
with
got
him and say,
Chuka and people like me coming up and saying this doesn't work, then the message is quite clear. He asked, can I go back and try again on some of these elements? And she has said at the moment no, which of course I would expect her to say. So he's turned it down. That makes it quite difficult for him now to continue where he is at the moment.
So do you think he'll step down because of that?
Normally in Cabinet, if you refuse a job, generally you go, because there's no other job on offer. At the moment there is his present job, but so I don't know. It'll certainly be clear, I think, this morning.
Do you know what the problem is? It's an incompetent government, in my view. I would say that. I'm a Labour MP. Yeah. And I think that the Prime Minister's handled these negotiations badly. But the problem here is Brexit. You know, if you had the most competent government, they would not be able to deliver.
We know you're not a fan of Brexit. We've got to just. Really? Are you going to vote for or against it when it comes to it?
As the treaty stands at the moment, I simply cannot support it as it is. But I do think
there
are changes that can be made,
Brexit,
which I think would carry it through Parliament.
Yeah.
I think there are changes that can be made that will genuinely get pretty much a larger number in Parliament.
And what about you, Chuck?
I won't vote for this agreement. It's not in the interest of my constituents.
Even if that means that we're left with a hard Brexit?
I don't think... Well, you mean even if it means leaving without a deal.
Yeah.
I don't think there is no majority in the House of Commons. So the House of Commons will find another solution. And don't forget...
What is there a majority for in the House of Commons?
Well, potentially, you could potentially get a majority around a customs union and/or some form of single market relationship.
Okay.
But we're a long way off that. And some would argue the moment for that has passed.
Will
All I do know is this deal is not right.
Yeah.
Will Theresa May see this through? Is she going to survive this?
Well, it's very difficult to know because MPs are the worst electorate of the lot because they always tell everybody a complete pack of lies about what they're doing. So all I can tell you is, and that goes for any party, frankly.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. Well, hang on. You guys had to go getting rid of your leader about a year ago, and that all went bad. So my point is, I do genuinely think, on all probability, that Theresa May will still be here trying to get this deal through. But I don't know. I mean, tomorrow that could all change.
And look at it, you've got a copy of this. This is the withdrawal agreement.
Oh,
look at this.
You need to print that.
And Kate and Ben have read every single page.
Let me tell you, when you get down here.
Page 320, paragraph 36.
As you can see, it's been very well thumbed.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
Thank you for joining us.
Chuka pointed out that was there, actually. I think you two hadn't spotted it.
No. It got very hot. We blocked the doors open with it to get us through. Don't worry about that. Chuka, Ian, and thank you very much, Professor Anand, as well. Thanks for joining us.
So here's Alex with the weather.